All right, welcome to the Truth Dojo. This is going to be a really delicious segment. This is part 3 of Primal Security. I'm Joshua, and if you're watching Truth Dojo here, recording, I'm so excited about introducing you to the most amazing people I've ever met. Everybody here is like such a committed warrior to all this stuff, and I learn so much every time, and it's just such an honor to be in the company of people who are just here to change the world and to own their experience and do all this internal work together. It's really epic. Today's topic is on boundaries, which is also interesting because nobody here is a first timer, so we don't have to touch upon the boundaries of what it means to be here the first time. So we get to, I think, go a little bit deeper today. In the next series, we're only going to allow people to come in who are first timers, starting at the very beginning of the series. So the vibe will be more like this every time, where we'll already be acclimated. There won't be the energy of like, oh, a new person kind of thing. And so we'll be able to practice right now for what the next series will feel like in that way. So that means I also won't be introducing anybody today. If somebody is here who you haven't met yet, then it might be worth mentioning, oh, I haven't met this person, or you can send them a message, hi, or whatever. I'm looking forward to busting some myths about what boundaries are. Oh, my man. I'm looking forward to getting everybody's personal myth busting on what boundaries mean and how we hold them in ways that are not with our fullness, and holding boundaries in ways that are based in fear. And yeah, I feel like I would like to lead the intro meditation. So that sounds fun. So I'd invite everybody to come into your body and maybe put your hands on something, either on your legs or on the arms of your chair, or just on something so you can feel a texture with your hands. And I want you to put your focus with your eyes closed in your third eye. And I want you to, with your third eye, I want you to feel the texture also of the inside of your head. I want you to use your skin to feel the texture of the air around you. This is all a way that we're able to get more and more in contact with what is happening with our body right now. How is my body shaped right now? How am I interacting with gravity right now? What pressures are upon me physically? Maybe even emotionally, but without the whole story, just the physical and emotional pressure that's present in the body. feeling into temptations to possibly distract our attention away, and noticing those temptations as pressures themselves. And coming back to the source, the very center, which is the center of intensity, the center of luminosity, the center of care, the center of our being where all possibility emerges from. And from the central place, I want to imagine a flower begins to open. And I want you to choose the color and the texture of the flower as it's right for you. And as the petals open, you can hear them. Whoosh. And this is the full you, your full self, coming online, saying, I'm here to be powerful. I'm here to be potent. I'm here to be a voice, seen and heard so that I can stand in my truth. So others can benefit from my wisdom, so others can benefit from my energy. So I can discover who I am by allowing my voice to speak as it needs to speak, by trusting my intuition, by trusting who I need to be today, beyond understanding, tapping into the truth of my vibration that wants to come from the primal aspect of my being, possibly parts of me that people in the regular world can't always deal with, can't always accept, don't know how to handle. And I bring all of that here with me too. My ferocity is allowed. My joy is allowed. My anger is allowed. My sadness is allowed. My fear is allowed. All of it is allowed to be present because our flower is open and we know it. And we know that this is not the typical kind of space of the regular world. This is the space that honors the evolution toward the future of humanity, and that we ourselves are that evolution intentionally. And coming back to the texture of where you're sitting or standing, feeling again your hands, feeling again your skin touching the air, feeling again how your body is being affected by gravity. Taking a deep breath. Letting out a sigh. And one more of those. Deep breath. And actually one more of those just for good measure. Deep breath. And with that, we have arrived. So I invite you to open your eyes. Feel the energy in your body. Feel how powerful you are. And let's make some magic together. Thank you. So, starting off, I'll just give my little piece about what I'd like to say about boundaries, what I'd like to say about introducing this topic. Hello, Moshe. Hello, Sarah. Welcome. I'm going to maybe bust a couple of myths about boundaries right now and just open up this topic of conversation and hand it over to you shortly. One of the most important things for me is recognizing that boundaries can be negative or they can be positive. And that doesn't mean good or bad, that just means I want something or I don't want something. I need something or I don't need something. These are all boundaries, right? Anything that individuates us, anything that sets us apart from other people is a boundary. And so what that means is if I walk into a store and I say, I need toothpaste. Can you point me to the toothpaste aisle? I've just set a boundary because now there's a difference between me and the other customers. So that is a boundary. There's also a difference between me and the person I'm speaking to. They don't need toothpaste, I need toothpaste. So this is creating individual need, individual separation. And this can be scary for people when they want to fit in, right? Because if boundaries create separation, then it can be perceived as like spiritual separation. Like I want unity, I want connectedness, I want to be seen for my willingness to have fun and to honor other people. But if we're separating ourselves, it can appear threatening to people. And especially, when we grew up, probably it felt threatening when we had needs that our parents didn't know how to honor, when we had needs that our family made wrong somehow. And especially imagine when children tell their parents no. Parents often don't like that. So parents will often kind of strong arm the will of their children. Don't you say no to me. I am so-and-so. I am this giant person and you are not. And so you will not say those words to me because there's really no good reason for it. It's just other than fear of a child being perhaps more centered in their willpower and centered in what they want than the parent is. We'll talk more about parenting at some point, but today it's mostly about general topic of boundaries. We'll talk about today setting boundaries in ways that are effective and setting boundaries in ways that are not effective. We'll talk about setting boundaries in ways that are upsetting for people or possibly setting the same boundary in a way that people can actually receive. And I'm going to wrap up my introduction now, and I'll see what wants to be said. And I will invite you to breathe into the flow of the group as you share, and feel the benefit of the energy that wants to come through you. When it's your time to share, I want you to feel how the group is experiencing you as an individual. And so don't take that for granted. I want you to experience that when you have something to share and nobody else is sharing, that is you setting a boundary, and that is you taking ownership of the experience. And so recognize that you have a real opportunity to affect the whole energy of the group when you speak. And so I want you to be aware of the opportunity when you do so. So, who would like to kick off the conversation? Nicole.
Hello, everyone. Most of you know me. For a couple of you, this is our first time in dojo together, even though it's not our first time here. I'm Nicole. I'm from Tennessee in the United States. And I really appreciate what you said, Joshua, about realizing your presence in the group and being aware of your impact and your individual experience, because I tend to wait for the pauses and the silent points before I try to take my turn. And I always tell myself, like, I'm not a jumper. Like, I don't jump at the opportunity for somebody else to get done and then just start talking. And so I like this topic about boundaries because I've always thought of myself as having sort of unhealthy boundaries. Like, there was this story that was playing out in my life because I don't really have a deep appreciation of conflict in general. And so this morning I had this revelation from a recent experience that I decided not to confront a specific person because I knew it wouldn't help. And I decided to remove myself from the situation instead. And I was like shaming myself for not laying down a boundary and not standing up for myself instead of just walking away the way that I did. And I realized that I have this story that says in order to lay down my boundaries, there has to be conflict. And I had this revelation that that is not true. Like, me walking away was a boundary because I knew that trying to set a boundary would not do any good with this particular person. They would not respect that boundary. It was not safe to lay a boundary with them. And so that was a big thing for me this morning, waking up and getting ready for work and thinking about what we were going to be talking about here this afternoon, for me this afternoon, that, you know, boundaries don't have to be born from conflict. And the action of removing my energy from that situation was the boundary. And that was respect for myself. And I do actually have healthy boundaries when it comes to conflict, because I had a fight with a very close friend a few weeks ago, and she got me to the point where I was like, you know what? Like, I tried to walk away so that it would not escalate, and it didn't work. And I went back and ended up, you know, we both said things that we shouldn't have said. And finally I was like, fuck off. And that, for me, that's big, because I don't do that. I don't tell people when they're, projecting their stuff onto me or whatever. I don't tell people to fuck off. Like, I'll sit there and take it. I'll shrink, or I'll try to make it better or mediate it, or just, whatever. But that was a moment of standing up for myself. But I also went back and said, okay, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry, but we do not need to talk right now, because this is not going to get better until we can both meet each other where we are. And so, we slept on it, and we came back the next day, and both of us were like, this is where I was wrong. These are my boundaries, let's make this better. Like, we love each other enough to work on this and, be better in the future. We're very, very close friends. And so that was another revelation that I had this morning, was just like, no, I have healthy boundaries, and I have really great discernment, because I knew when to walk away instead of confronting this person, and who was worth the confrontation to fight with and fight for. Like, I'm proud of myself for having that experience this morning. And I thought that was an interesting angle, that like, boundaries don't have to come from conflict, or they don't only need to be laid in conflict. That was a big thing for me. So thank you.
Yeah, maybe stay with me here. So I would love to have you kind of define conflict, because there's also sort of a concept that conflict itself is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think the myth is really like that there's any problem at all, right?
Yeah.
And like, if I'm buying toothpaste in the grocery store, I could like walk towards somebody and accidentally run into them. It could be good news, or it could be bad news. Like, we get to decide, right?
Yeah. No, I get where you're coming from, and I agree. Like, conflict is sort of a general term.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's like aggression.
Yeah.
When people get in their anger, or even their passion gets the best of them, and it starts to become intrusive, and when they get invasive or try to penetrate beyond the point of where my boundaries lay, like, that for me is a negative experience of conflict that I do not enjoy having. And so that was where, this one person was being abusive and not respectful of my boundaries. That's why it wouldn't have mattered.
Mm-hmm. So it's like looking for conflict is different.
Yeah. And this other person, they were just having a bad day because they were going through a lot, and I knew that. And me and this person actually love and respect each other very much. And so it was safe to enter into that arena with them, so like, for me, it's the aggression and, unhealthy ways of expressing aggression and anger toward me. That's when I tend to shut down instead of standing up for myself.
Totally. And it might be intended to get you to shut down, right? I think that's what we're really kind of looking for, is how is somebody testing your boundaries in order to provoke you, in order to, to see how strong you are. And I think that's where we know it as sort of a, it's like codependent sort of dynamics.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. And Jerome, we can come to you next here. I want to just mention, we've had several requests for people asking us in the Truth Dojo to kind of provide some deeper coaching or things like that. I'm like a little bit shy with this, because I don't like to be pushy or like step on people's sense of space or boundaries. I want to honor people's boundaries. If you would like deeper feedback on something, feel free to let us know. We have a lot of skill and wisdom in the group, so if you want help with a topic, please voice it. I tend to kind of hold back a little bit as far as doing that, because like I said, I don't want to, if you just want to be heard, I just want to give you a chance to be heard. But if you actually want to show me what I'm missing, show me where my blind spots are, we can also do that. So I'm looking forward to literally taking this group to a whole different space, into a deeper space, especially starting next series. But we can kind of set that precedent now if you'd like to. Yeah. So Jerome, what's up?
Yeah, when you phrased it as when they're trying to get you to shut down, I kind of wanted to jump on that and kind of explore that a little bit further, because often when people say stuff that's hurtful, it's more that they're trying to reinstate their reality, the story that they've written that means that maybe they're not wrong, or they didn't fuck up, or they were justified to do what they did. And it's just unfortunate that their reality then means that you're wrong and you fucked up and you should feel like shit. And I think for my more recently in conflict, when I kind of feel accused, I've always tried to kind of pause, digest, and tell myself that that person is just trying to enforce a reality that's safe for them. But yeah, maybe I've kind of forgotten that actually there are times when people are intending on shutting me down, and that can be an intent as well. My assumption behind why they would do that is just because perhaps me expressing myself becomes a threat to their reality, and so they just want to completely stop me from expressing my view so that they can be safe around me again. But yeah, if anyone can expand, I don't know, maybe I see it clearly already, and it's just cool to have said it out loud and acknowledged it in my head. But if I haven't seen it all, then I'd love for someone to expand on that.
Yeah. Hey everyone. Hope you guys are good. So, is my voice coming through fine? Okay, that's good. Yeah, I've actually had a lot of that, what you were talking about, Jerome, in my own family constellation, from the family that born and raised me, and that I've always been very different than them. I've always been very free-spirited, or let's say been willing to unveil things in life that they have never been willing to unveil. I've had a curiosity in my nature that just didn't fit into their perspective, and that curiosity made it so that I had a possibility to create a different worldview than the narrative. And that's pretty much what we're often up against, is the narrative. Not just the narrative, but also, and in my family, that is, that my family is extremely impacted by world events, and they are extremely brainwashed by the media, and it's ultra hard to have any sorts of conversations with them where you are a thought heretic, or a thought criminal, whatever, like that. So to think out of the box has always been not allowed, and that's pretty much the only thing that I could do, was just to try and get overviews over situations to understand the world that I'm in, and they just didn't play that way. So I get you, that I was a total threat to their perception of existence, and also how they had created their own life because of their inner circumstance. Yeah? That's on the one hand, when it comes to being affected and molded by the society that you live in and the stream of information which is in that society. On the other hand, I've also had in this same family of mine a social inheritance which has been like that. Women are like so and so, and men are like so and so, and some of it is okay, some of it is rubbish, like some of it is total violence, like some of it is extremely like self-scathing, like and somehow like the females in my family are brainwashed to feel that all men are bad somehow, because my grandmother, she had some experience when she was a kid which was pretty bad, like she got sexually molested somehow, and then things progressed from there. And so therefore all men became bad, therefore like her partner became something bad, and therefore she had to control him, and therefore like her sons became somehow bad unless they filled this and this and this criteria. There's like a long list of things in the family that if you don't fulfill this long list of things, you are not accepted, and therefore the way that you are in life is not okay. Like it's not okay to be in life in such a way that you just love yourself and live from that, like, and you do whatever feels right for you. That's not okay. Everything that has something to do with life flowing through your body, that's just a threat. So I get you very well, like what you're talking about there, Jerome, like when it comes to this phenomena like in the family. But I've actually been looking very much forward to this topic since boundaries and the lack of has been a huge teacher in my life. Like to have boundaries and to not have boundaries, like to as Joshua was talking about in his intro to our meeting, that our parents, they have a tendency to trample on our boundaries as children. So because they have the power, they have the control, they know better, they are the grown-up, and if we are in disregard to their beliefs or how they do stuff, then we are a threat to the whole system. Like this is how things work. So in many ways it's understandable. In many ways they are right. In many ways they are not. In many ways they destroyed me. Like I can't talk for all of you guys or say how you guys experienced this, but I've been forcibly, mistreated by my family when I was a child, like in many ways. So and the trampling on my boundaries was just a standard in some way, shape, and form. So later on in life, I had rage issues, like anger issues, and that's what you get, like when you have boundaries and you don't know, and no one shows you how to respect your boundaries. And that's also a part of the social inheritance. Like, my parents did that to me because their parents did that to them, right? So unless they would never have done that. So they would have understood that there's a different reality, like there's a different way to approach a child, a teenager, or so that gave me like a lot of rage issues. It gave me a lot of problems with people because, on the one hand, I became like the tank that just waltz over them, like just to really squash people. Like that I remember like a period in my life and people were like, hey, slow down, like, control yourself. You see, you are like filling up all the space, and you are just, the way you enforce things is you have no respect for my being, and so on and so forth. You're like a tank. Like I heard that again and again. You're like a tank. Like people, had that on repeat. Like you're like a tank. So I because of me not understanding my own boundaries, therefore I had no way of understanding that others might have boundaries. And I was like, huh? What are you talking about? What do you mean? Like a tank? I'm trying to give you something good or beautiful or whatever, forcibly in my own way. And so so that was also one of the things that followed how I was treated as a child. So this has given a lot of problems on many levels, boundaries and the lack of, and especially in communicating and especially in connecting to people, and also like boundaries for myself, boundaries between me and me, like in saying that there's a boundary in how bad I treat myself. Like there's a boundary in how, disgraceful thoughts I might have about my existence. Like there's a, like I start to step up into a part of myself where I just love me unconditionally and I back myself up on all levels. Yeah? That's a boundary to me. Yeah? You see, like an inner thing. I just don't lose that. I don't lose that. And they taught me that by taking that away from me, by never teaching this to me, you see. So, welcome back, Moshe. So this subject is really big in my life, so like I've learned, and when I started to develop boundaries, I had a hard time saying no to people. I don't have a hard time saying no to people today. I had a hard time saying no to people. I had a hard time putting things in a way that it was okay for me to be behind my boundary. And so I remember when I started creating my boundary, or let's say feeling into where it is, because it was always there and it was always natural and it was always healthy, no matter how much they trampled on it. The signals were always there. Okay? And so when I started listening to them, really, my boundaries, then everything just became a no and a fuck you, like no, and a fuck you too. And I said no to everything just to find out like where is the boundary? Like you say, oh, and I said no, and then okay, it was a yes maybe. Like, okay, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. It was a yes. You're allowed. It's okay. So it was like a dance, like a back and forth, and I had to have like let's say a ballast towards myself somehow, and a trust in that I later on would be able to carry myself also on this level. So and then having my own boundaries today, like to be behind my boundaries and to sense that I am behind my boundaries, that gives me freedom, that gives me strength, that reinforces my self-love, that makes it so that I can move and through whatever situation in existence. Yeah? You see, I have this personal way of talking or thinking about trust when it comes to people. You know? And my politics when it comes to trust is that I don't have to trust anyone. I don't have to trust nobody, right? Because, okay, let's say like this, that I trust people to follow themselves. Yeah? You see, I trust them to do exactly that which is inside of them in any given situation, no matter how positive or negative that might be. That's the trust that I trust other people. Who I really need to trust is me. In every situation I go into. Like, and that's it. Like my head, my insides, my third eye, my whatever vision that I have, whatever sensitivities I have to any given situation, this is where I need to trust. I don't need to trust anyone. Nothing outside of myself I need to trust. I need to trust me. in every situation. And that's a boundary, you see. And then when I see I cannot trust myself right there, I cannot carry myself right there. So, and then I've hit my own wall. And then I understand it. Now I have to retract. I have to do something else. So, yeah, like boundaries is and I've been waiting and waiting to hear what all of you have to say. Like, it's like a candy store just waiting to be open here. Like, yeah, let me hear some from you guys. Yeah. So thank you guys. I love you guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
I got some candy.
Yeah, something later.
Okay. Oh yeah, really appreciating this topic today. And I guess I will begin by saying that I come from a family who can't set boundaries. My parents were never taught how to set boundaries, and I remember for so much of my life I had this paradigm of like, if I set a boundary and say no to someone, they're going to run away from me. Like, I had this like completely faulty rewiring that saying no and setting a boundary destroys a connection. Whereas now I know that the exact opposite is true. Like, saying no and setting a boundary creates a lot more connection and trust than saying yes all the time. Because if I never say no to someone, then my yes is not true either. And I'm really grateful to be part of lots of different kind of tantra and sexuality communities, which really celebrate boundaries and celebrate people saying no. And it's this kind of 180-degree shift that by me saying no to someone, that's actually building more communication and more trust. Because me respecting myself shows that I respect them more. I'm going to jump around a bit because I made notes. I'm a loser. But I love this topic. Kind of building on what Jerome said, I feel like at a simple level, a boundary is either to connect or protect, or even both, right? I'm either saying no or yes to something because I'm trying to protect myself, or because I'm trying to get more connection with that other person. And I think it can be easy to get mix up what will connect, and I don't think they're mutually exclusive either. What else was coming up for me? This idea that I'm always saying yes to something. I'm either saying yes to like going further, like yes, let's continue, or no to continuing, but yes to more intimacy with myself. So I think I'm always saying yes to more intimacy. It's just, who is the intimacy with? Is it with you, or is it like, no, I'm really being more intimate with myself? The other thing that I guess I wanted to share is this idea that this resonates really strongly for me because of the kind of my eating disorder recovery, but the difference between like a punishing rule and an enabling tool, like an empowering, loving tool. And the difference between a rule and a tool is like, a rule is something I will follow without thinking, without checking in with myself. It's just, no, I have a boundary. I don't let men touch my breasts, right? Like that's like a, I've been in like tantra workshops where people talk about their boundaries in this like past tense way. Like, I have these boundaries. This is the dictionary of my boundaries. Here. And for me, there's nothing present in that. There's nothing truthful in that. It's not coming from the heart and the now. And I think that for a boundary to be really like a loving tool, like something to help protect or connect, it has to be a moment by moment in the present thing. It can't be this like historic, with this person at this particular time, I have one particular boundary, but with this same person at a different time, I may have a different boundary. And so I think anytime they become like dogmatic or a rule, it's like an avoidance of the truth. And I also kind of think that so like for boundaries to be kind of truthful and loving and helpful and courageous, they need to be negotiated with the self in the present moment. And the way that that's possible for me is to slow down. Like, it's not possible to do that if I'm rushing or if I'm in my head, because my head might be a yes, but my body or my yoni might be a no. And if I'm just like rushing ahead, I'm not going to notice that. And I often experience that my head boundaries are different from my body boundaries. And, you know, my head can be in that place of fear that, oh my God, if I say no to this person right now, I'm going to be more distant. I'm going to be more alone. They're going to leave me. But my body is just saying no. And yeah, that really comes from slowing down. And I think a courage to be in a space of I don't know as well. I've used I don't know as a kind of like boundary before. Like my boundary is I'm not really sure what my boundary is right now. Or I'm not really sure what I want with you right now. And so I don't want to push forward into something that may not be a fully embodied yes. What else was coming up? Yeah, I so relate to Hilmar, what you shared about mental boundaries. Or I guess kind of boundaries with the self. That's something I've really been exploring recently in terms of, I've been trying to implement them, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so. For example, a boundary I'm trying to have right now is I don't look at my body in the mirror, or I don't look at my body, or I don't check my body, because it causes me an enormous amount of pain. And linked with that, trying to not engage with body hatred thoughts, because again, it just causes me a huge amount of pain. And I'm a lot less successful at setting boundaries with myself than I am with other people, I think, or boundaries with my thoughts, in terms of not engaging or not giving energy to particular thought patterns. So would love to hear, Hilmar, more about how you actually, what that looks like in terms of not giving, like setting a boundary with thought patterns that aren't your kind of true self. Yeah, but really grateful for the topic. I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, so this thing, as I said before, like the issue or topic of boundaries has been huge for me, and like I've had it over many different periods in my life to work on it, like on different levels and such. So this part that you're asking about is something that came in when I was working on my emotional body, like on my emotions, that to understand that, okay, and there are a few things that I want to say, but okay, so let's talk about like yeah, I don't know why I want to say this, but I'm going to do it. So if like we're looking at a spiritual world here, like, and things have been exploding like on a spiritual level for some years, and there are a lot of people that are prominent that are coming forth, and there are gurus and there are masters, and there are some of them are really sick fuckers doing insane, messed up stuff with people, and so people get attracted to them because there's something in their energies that is just working, and that which makes it so that they end up hurting the people they're meant to help is the lack of healing in the emotional body, all of them. all of them. They all have this same thing in common. They haven't healed their emotional bodies. I just wanted to say that. So, yeah. So it's extremely important. Like this thing, the emotional body is a forgotten topic for many in spirituality. Like there's a lot of people who want to run away from their feelings, and they want to create an alternate reality where everything just is light and only going for the positive stuff and the good stuff, and and they don't really understand that they're creating their own downfall by doing so. And therefore so for myself, like this boundary of stopping myself in the eternal bashing of my own existence. Yeah, so it was like a thing that like not just a leniency, but a self-love, and like to have spaciousness inside of me, for me, like to have an understanding for that all actions in life, that we might have wanted, or I might have wanted that things were in a certain way, and then they fell out to be in another way, and who knows, like, who am I to say how things are supposed to progress in existence, and why am I supposed to use the progression of things, no matter what they are in existence, to turn them against myself? Like, and one of the things that I noticed with people is that maybe you're around someone who is dead set on really just bashing themselves and being hard on themselves, and they will use whatever reason in their vicinity to do that. Like, they will use everything just to tell themselves the story of that they are so bad and so in this way and in that way and whatever. It's because it fits into the direction of the narrative that they got going on. So this is like a storytelling which is being programmed into the cells of your being, and therefore you don't know or understand how to have your own back, or how to have boundaries on that level, right? Okay, so I feel really bad about myself. Whatever happened, I might have done something, someone might have, maybe a typical thing for me might have been that I tried to help someone and it didn't work, and that person then turns on me. Like that's something that I used to experience like some years back. I might use that as a narrative to then bash me, like, oh, and I'm now bad because I couldn't do so and so, and I didn't maybe realize that my extremely noble intent to lift that person's life, that I didn't see that. Like, I only saw that I just wasn't good enough. I didn't see all of the good things that came out of what I was doing with that person, and that's again just a typical scenario for myself. And so I could use it against myself. But in general, like all feelings of negativity, or let's say, that are inherently just destroying me, like self-scathing, self-destructive. And I've had that on so many different levels, like a borderline type behavior, like that. When I came to a certain point where I could see and I could feel, okay, this feeling is here, it wants so and so, and therefore I'm going to do the direct opposite. Like, and that's one thing, like a part of my boundary is to notice that it's going on, to really just see and be awake to, okay, that's how it works. Like, that's what it does. And these are the feelings that I don't want to, and in this case, lodge down into, because it's downwards, it's hardcore, and so therefore I have like created like a wall between me and these things, because I know that it's I can destroy myself on it, and I can use months on it, years on it, and it can like progress and take over just in and of itself. So
Hey, Helmut.
Yeah.
You mind if I make a little bit of space for Katie right now? Oh, I froze him.
Ooh.
Oh, you're back. I'm just gonna. You mind if I feel some energy wanting to shift over? And Katie, thanks.
Oh, thanks. That's interesting. Yeah, Joshua messaged me and was like, "How are you?" And I was like, I felt oversaturated inside of me, and I was like, I think I need to like express myself. And it was interesting actually talking about boundaries. This is what I'm experiencing, and historically, I don't know how to set positive boundaries, like in terms of I need to do something, or I have a need. It's really difficult for me. So anyways, that's something, that feeling that I was having just now was that. And yeah, I feel a lot welling up in me around this topic, and I have a lot that I want to share, and I don't necessarily even know where to start, except to say, like, there's just a few things that were coming up for me as somebody who has a lot of difficulty setting boundaries or being able to like feel my yes. What has helped me so much is kind of setting a baseline of a no, and then being in that place and feeling really safe, like setting a no boundary. Kind of, I really loved what you said, Abby, about like using a boundary as a tool rather than a rule. But like I've noticed for myself, having those bottom line baseline boundaries, it is helpful for me, because then I know when I've crossed it. Like I know it's an active choice that it would have to take for me to, like, if I've decided, okay, I'm not having sex with anybody on a first date or something, like that's my rule, or and then I do have permanent veto power, but it takes that way, like the decision is like to do something rather than, oh, I have to backtrack. So like, I know for myself, like I was saying before the meeting started, like I am so much more comfortable saying yes than saying no. Like I know for myself how uncomfortable it is for me to turn a maybe into a no rather than a maybe into a yes. And so a way that I protect myself is by setting my boundaries a few steps back from where they probably lie. So when I meet somebody new, especially when I meet a man, when I meet somebody who like I can tell there might be some attraction, I almost always, if I'm going to forge an authentic friendship with this person, I am really explicit about like, I'm interested in friendship with you. I just want you to know that. And it's not that you've said anything or done anything. I'm not telling you that I'm interpreting like sexual advances necessarily, but I feel more safe in connection if I've said that explicitly. Because and then sometimes from that place, there is a feeling of like wanting to move closer. But the only way that I feel safe enough to get in touch with what my authentic desire is if I know that that I have that solid foundation, that no to lean back on. And you know, I resonated just so much with what Hilmar was sharing about how it's really all about our self-trust. It's not about, I don't need to be able to trust anyone else. I just need to be able to trust myself in honoring my boundaries, and also having compassion for myself in that honoring my boundaries felt unsafe to me for a lot of my life, because it was this risk of like losing connection with people in my family, or with, you know, whoever I was saying no to. And so, yeah, just like having compassion for me on that level, but like really just doing whatever it takes for me to feel safe to access what my yes is. So even though I'm actually way more comfortable saying no than I am saying yes, because I don't trust my yes as much as I trust my no. I don't trust what I like, oh, I have a desire to do something. Like I had a desire to eat a mango and I ate a mango. But a lot of times my yeses come from a desire to be accepted and liked. And that feels very unsafe. So for me, the safer thing is to say no and then to feel into the yes. And specifically when it comes to eating disorders as well, like just from, I was bulimic for a while, and that was like me crossing my own boundary in a way that I was like, oh, I know that this is hurting me. Like I knew that like making myself throw up was like a major crossing of my boundaries. Before that, I'd kind of like dabbled in just like restricting my eating or having like, you know, things that weren't really kind to myself, but I didn't see it as that. I could kind of justify it away as like, but I'm taking care of myself in this way. And then all of a sudden bulimia came into my life and I was like, oh, this is black and white. This is not loving to myself. Like we can all agree on that in here, you know, in my mind, I had a hard time justifying that behavior as something that was loving to myself. And so, you know, I was really grateful for that kind of wake-up call in my life because it like connected me with my no in a bigger way. And, you know, it is challenging to be able to set boundaries with yourself, but like feeling a no that big gives you this like reason, like something to push up against, like, okay, I know that that's a no for sure. Like just starting with the bottom lines. And like in my recovery, that has been my bottom line of like, oh, I know if I cross that's me going into some like, you know, like, I guess, you know, I mean, like I'm kind of going into eating disorder territory, but I think you can like apply it to other forms of self-sabotage as well. But like, I know if I cross that boundary that like, there's something I need to like really address something. Whereas like I can have like, oh, you know, sometimes I'll eat compulsively and it's like, that's okay. Like I used to be kind of rigid actually when I have weeks where I will like eat compulsively, sometimes it's like more of just like a gentle wake up call of like, okay, like let's see what's really going on, but like you don't need to beat yourself up about that behavior. So oftentimes like beating myself up about certain like, oh, I'm not taking care of myself well enough, like, and being really hard on myself, like that's the thing that, okay, I'm really going off on a tangent, but essentially it's like so subjective and it has to do with just like the way that I'm relating to myself, more so than like a set of boundaries that are really black and white, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's all about relating to the self. And thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, thank you. It kind of brings to mind the conversation we were having yesterday, Katie, which was like, I don't want to get into the topic, but it was like you were saying, I want to talk about this topic with you and I want to talk about it now. And I was like, no, you don't. Like your energy is telling me I don't want to talk about this topic now. I want you to set a boundary about this topic with me because like your energy was telling me like I kind of want to create a conflict about this topic with you, and so my new boundary was why don't we find out what we have in common? Why don't we discover where we have an overlap of our shared values, and that will create more space where we can get into this topic later. But right now we need to, like you said, kind of set the foundation of the relationship to a sense of safety before getting deeper into this topic, just to create like it was probably still conflict, but it's conflict in the context of rapport. It's conflict in the context of like we have each other's back no matter where it goes, you know.
Yeah, creating the safety to set, it's like, yeah, it's 100% about safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Aurora, I don't know if you saw my message. I said welcome, but since I don't think you saw, I want to just acknowledge that you came here. Thank you. Cool.
Sarah was gonna share.
What was that?
I said, I think Sarah was gonna share.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear from Sarah.
Oh, thanks. I'm sitting in a cabin in the woods, so can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me? Oh, oh, I should have taken a screenshot. That was beautiful. Let me know if the connection gets weird, okay? I've enjoyed so much listening to everybody that shared so far, and I've really enjoyed, I have this like huge insight that's been forming in my brain based on what everyone has been sharing, a big insight for me, and so I thought I'd share it. This whole thing, so years ago, I had a therapist tell me, Sarah, you have to learn to say no before you can say yes. And so obviously that's totally in line with everything that Katie has shared and everything that Abby was sharing. And so I've been thinking a lot over the years about why exactly there's that progression. Like one does have to come before the other. Like Abby, you said it so beautifully that unless you're able to say no, when you say yes, then your yes doesn't really mean anything. So you can't say yes first and then go to no. You have to have no first and then go to yes. And it's like, why is that? Why? But it, makes a lot of intuitive sense to us all. And then this relates to what Hilmar was saying. I've noticed in my own spiritual practice, I've been practicing Tibetan Buddhism for a long time, and one of the big pieces of the practice is like constantly dissolving yourself into emptiness, like over and over and over again, dissolving self into emptiness, or the unified field, the place where everything is relative. And in order to be able to do that properly, okay, so if I'm a traumatized person, if I'm coming from a place of some kind of hurt, I need a strong boundary in order to feel safe, right? Katie was talking about safety. And it's only from the place of safety, then can I dissolve. So it's like in the process of personal development, like the personal evolution process, we have to reform ourselves when we've been traumatized, when there's been scattering. Like we have to reform, and then once we're in a reformed place, then we can dissolve. And there's this constant constriction and expansion. And like that constriction, expansion is like the energetic or physical process that we go through in order to evolve. Like that's what evolution looks like. So that's what I was thinking about. But curious to hear folks' thoughts.
Well, I'll just add one quick thing, which is maybe two things. Is I've found that individuation is really necessary before the awakening process, and the dissolving of self, we call that awakening. But to have a self to dissolve, we have to individuate first. We have to discover, this is who I am before that part can be dissolved. And so with that in mind, Buddhism specifically can be very confusing for a lot of people, especially if someone's core wounding is like basically, I don't exist. if someone's core wounding is I don't exist, or I don't have an impact on people, or nobody sees me, and then trying to dissolve from that place is based in that same wounding, and not only is it not going to work, but it's self-abusive, and it's like it's exacerbating the very issue. And so also people with this core wounding are often very attracted to Buddhism, because it's like, oh, here's an excuse to punish myself, basically. And you know, nothing's wrong with Buddhism, but it's just highly misunderstood when people come at it from this angle. And so, like you said, you know, addressing those traumas first to be able to really understand, oh, I have a temptation to silence myself. I have a temptation to not exist. I have a temptation to hide and not have any impact on people. Recognizing that first before getting into these practices is you know, really important.
I want to share a little metaphor I came across a couple weeks ago. My flatmate was making corn flour, corn starch water, the stuff you can run across that's like liquid until you press on it and then it gets hard. So he just mixed corn flour with water at the right level with dilution, and we were playing with it. Like you squeeze it, it goes hard, and then you slowly squeeze it and it goes soft. And I realized that's actually a really cool metaphor for the masculine and the feminine, and the kind of like the reshaping and exploring versus the kind of like becoming hard and doing kind of a thing. And I actually kind of like realized this metaphor for like teams as well. Like a military team might get really hard and do what they're made to do, but they really struggle to change direction. Whereas perhaps the more feminine kind of a team would be able to really react to everything that's going on, like really consistently and live, and therefore like adjust what the team does to really cater for everything. And so when you kind of talked about this kind of constricting and expanding, and this kind of like dying and awakening, or awakening and something else, I actually like really enjoyed playing with this like cornflower thing, and thinking about that as a metaphor, that like, you know, perhaps if I was to like do a contract like work-wise, I might like turn into the solid version, become relatively masculine, and design that shape based around what I think I need to be doing in this contract and just do it. But then perhaps when I'm like being a bit more reflective and evolving and truly relating to somebody and exchanging with them and learning and growing, then maybe I'd be like more that liquid version of the cornflower that can kind of change shape based on its surroundings and melt down on the finger. So I encourage you guys to make a little bit at home and have a little play.
Yeah, what you were sharing, Jerome, reminded me of that sort of cliched thing that is sometimes said at the beginning of workshops, like, this is a safe space. And I remember seeing something a while ago from a teacher of mine, which is, you know, there is no such thing as a safe space. No one else can make me feel safe. I have to create the feeling of safety in myself by creating boundaries and committing to uphold them, or kind of setting no's, like Katie said. And I, you know, it's a kind of primal emotional experience. I can be sitting here in my bedroom completely at zero material physical risk and feel totally unsafe in my own body. And so this concept of a safe space or a not safe space is, I don't find it a helpful distinction. Safety is an experience that I have to actively cultivate within myself. And yeah, it's this sort of thing of like, do I have my own back? Am I trying to shut down a particular part of myself? And often I think for me, the feeling of not feeling safe is because I'm trying to shut down or cut off or like extradite some part of myself. and therefore there's a feeling of unsafety because I'm not in integrity. I'm not fully there. I'm trying to like extradite some part of myself. Yeah, and I'm also reminded of this concept of like the flowing within a container, that it like limitation creates creativity, limitation creates the feeling of safety, and that being the kind of the like feminine archetype, is the sort of flowing within the container created by the masculine. Yeah, I will leave it there.
I disagree. Totally disagree. Yeah.
I can't wait to learn.
So the safety is an experience I have to actively cultivate within myself. Was kind of like, that's what Katie, she wrote there, and that's also what I understood you were saying. And that safety is something that you have to maintain somehow, that it's something that is always depleting, and you have to replenish in some ways. That's my experience is totally opposite, in such a way that fear, 99.9% of all my fears never happen. They never happen. It's just like a fantasy world of just craziness going on between my ears, and it never happens. And seriously, like, my brain is elaborate, like the stories it can tell me. Like, we're talking James Bond type fears. We're not talking like, I've seen a lot of movies, so it's not just like, I was walking down the street and a dog might bite me. Ooh, it's not like that. Like, we're talking like intricate like stories here, like, and they never happen. So while I'm saying this, I want to give you guys the opportunity to maybe recognize that this might be the same thing in your life. Like, that fear tells you stories. How many times do they really happen? Seriously. Like, and I really mean that as a very serious question to you, that you might ask yourself, like, once in a while, like, how many times is it that I've experienced these wild, intense, insane constructs of fear inside my brain? How many times do they happen, really? In my case, 0.1%, maybe. So, and that's the opening to understanding that the feeling of insecurity on Earth is something that we've always had. Just while we were hunter-gatherers, we lived in caves or whatever, like a saber tiger might all of a sudden just come up and just chew our asses, and or whatever, like big dinosaurs or whatever, like might just show up, and we had fear. Like, they've got darkness, we have mythology about darkness and light, everything coming from the beings coming forth into the dark, like predators and such. Like, this this is just how our construct is. Like, this is how we're built by hundreds and thousands of generations of being human after human after human after human. So there is an innate fear in every human body on the face of this planet just to be on the planet. Not just that, there's also an innate fear for us as light beings to manifest ourselves physically. So it's like it's on multiple levels, like this stuff. So for me, when it comes to having safety on Earth, I don't have to ask the question even. I don't try to maintain it. I'm free, totally 100% free. I'm free to die in any accident right around the corner. I'm free to be stomped on by a huge foot all of a sudden, like, or whatever the brain might find. So the only thing that can happen is the plan of my soul. I can't leave this planet unless my soul has planned it, and therefore it's perfect, and it's cool, it's good, it's beautiful. I love it. Like, if the plan of my soul happens, everything just went exactly like I wanted it to. You see, that's the only thing that I want in life, is that the plan of my soul happens. That's it. So I'm just listening. I'm meditating. I'm hearing what is it that my soul wants from me. And my soul is the Father, the Creator. My soul is the Christed one. So, and so that's my task. So in having security, it's just the only security that I can have is that the plan of the soul happens. That's the only security that I can have, and that's the only thing I allow myself to want. Like, seriously, ask about security. We're on a huge rock flying through space on 350,000 kilometers an hour. We are a meat machine being driven by a ghost, and ask about security. Like, it's weird like that, right? You see, so it's the question in itself. It just doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, security is something we surrender into, or I do. I surrender into life. I surrender into all those things that my soul has chosen for me beforehand, and I grab onto those things while I go through them as if I was their creator, because this is the truth. I don't know exactly how it's supposed to unfold and manifest and all that stuff, but I know it will, and that's enough, you see. So I have no fear here really anymore, and I don't have a security.
Kind of lost you, Hilmar. I'm not sure. Okay, well, while he's coming back from Antarctica, being frozen, I would like to, first I want to say, you like that one? I'd like to say, when I listen to Hilmar speaking for too long, it kind of makes me, it's just a lot of energy, and it kind of makes me, it kind of ends up being hard to focus because his energy is so strong. I'm curious, like, who else has this experience? Cool. Because it's like being electrified for me. I don't know how to say it, but
A tank.
What's that?
A tank.
Yeah, he's like a tank, exactly. Yeah. So I just want to, if that is happening for you, it's normal, and it's nothing. It's not unique, and nothing's wrong with you. Yeah, so I would like to invite anybody who hasn't contributed yet, if you'd like to chime in. Q.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for everything that you shared, like amazing pieces of the puzzle here. Something that arose for me is like boundaries coming from like a mental space as a way to control my experience, like based on judgments, like of what's good and bad, and trying to like really take care of myself and keep my boundaries, and kind of coming from a place of like, I'm not surrendering to security, like I'm in charge, I have to keep myself safe, I have to be on point in order to keep something terrible from happening, which is stressful. And coming from this like place of mental is in that, like what Hilmar was saying, of all that fear and the blah, 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 blah. Like it's that. And so something that I've been thinking of is like, what can I do to help myself? Like that internal, like always getting my own back and trusting myself. I feel that is so important for me in my experience to come from a movable place where I'm like, what's true for me now in this moment? And also allowing my mental to say to my emotional body, how can I help you? How can I be with you? And I think that relates for me with my inner child too, and part of my process of reparenting myself, of like, hey, little Q, like, how do you feel in this situation? Like, what's happening in your space and your energy and your body, so that I can tune into something that is like, you know, really tender, and being able to say, you know what, there are some like worries, or we're not feeling totally secure in this. So I'm going to say, no, little Q, you get to have safety. You get to be secure, and we don't have to do that thing. We don't have to hug that person. We don't have to go to that party. We can be where it feels good to be. And it's interesting too, because if it's something that I want to do that my inner child is afraid to do, like how wonderful that I can then be with my inner child and work through that. Be like, what is it that you're afraid of? And have that parenting and that structure to work towards that yes, if it's something that is really calling me, but I don't have the capacity to say yes to in this moment. Hi, Hilmar.
Hey, I'm sorry. I was the internet connection here is through a mobile hotspot, which is a new technology for me to utilize. So I'm a caveman when it comes to these things.
Well, I was just talking about working with the inner child in caring about boundaries and what to do. Yeah. Let's see what's real now. Yeah, so surrendering to that sense of security, and just staying with myself of how can I help you now in this situation? And rather than kind of coming from this space of like, what boundaries do I need to set in order to be safe? Like, how can I help myself in what's actually happening right now? So I think that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I wanted to share my experience with boundaries real quick. No boundaries at all. Just like nothing. And the more I pushed the boundaries on my family, the more I got back my own authority in my life. And after the first Truth Dojo online 2 weeks ago, I told everyone here that I have no problem saying anything to my parents, and I acted on it more deeper. And when I asked for money when I needed, all of them said no. And I asked for money to my community, and 30 people said yes, with the number that overall made my leap possible into the unknown void of traveling into Europe from New York, which didn't happen this time due to very strict visa restrictions. But that boundary aspect with my parents actually taught me that I have a back of 30 people, at least in my life, to give me what I'm asking for, and keep asking for that truth to myself, and acting on that truth has been really powerful in terms of like no boundaries thing. But now I'm really experiencing during this circle, during this time, I'm really experiencing a lot of anxiety within my body, because that exact topic I'm literally like processing in my head right now, because I have like all places where you can send messages all online places where you can send messages to that person that I'm truly connecting with. I sent those messages and none of them were looked at. And that tells a lot about like how there I am in terms of presence when I want something and I don't get it, and I want something and I push it until that part of me dies. And then I suffer a lot because it's very difficult to lose one of the biggest mirrors in my life in this case, that is not only connected with my personal emotions and the energy that I feel, connection, you know, that soul, and as well as work. So it's like a lot of part to lose. And somehow there's part of me that is like no boundary, that is so toxic, that wants that to happen. So I'm going through that, and it's very helpful to be in this space, to hear all of your voices, to help me understand that I'm not so insane, and learn from the best. So thank you. So complete.
Holy
Thank
shit,
you.
my body is shaking. Like, look at my hand. There's so much energy in my body at the moment, so it's incredible. I guess it's part of it because the topic is so big, and it resonates a lot of what every one of you has said resonates so much. I could speak a lot, and then at the same time I have the feeling I have nothing to say. I can just shake in front of you and be like this. Yeah, wanted to say that. It's incredible. Maybe one thing about, I've been thinking throughout talking here, for myself, how important it's to be present, like really to be listening to every one of you, and there's so much you're talking about, and then trying to understand you and to listen to you on a deeper level than just like going through what I would think about it. So what's behind of the words, and maybe it comes to boundaries as well. Like I can't be checking the chat box at all, otherwise I would go crazy. So that, I guess that's a need of mine, to really be present and to try to understand as much as I can understand. And that's been a big revelation today in the chat, that it's kind of like could that be also seen as a boundary? Yeah, and understanding the way I operate in groups, for instance, and then owning that and respecting that that's a need of mine, to be present and to make as much sense of it. And then, yeah, that's the role I often take. So I listen, and then I shake. I don't know what the fuck is that about, but yeah. So could move around a little.
Just want to say the amount of truth in this group is so overwhelmingly high that it just becomes this like constant journey that I only look to experience in my life, and everything that is not this becomes very annoying and not what I want to actually manifest in my life daily. So thank you, Joshua, for holding space, and every single person here. I'm so excited to meet you all.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joshua.
I could wait if you want to go first.
Well, okay. I was just gonna say, related to that feeling of like, oh, this is the truth, this is it. When you know, that's the feeling of knowing a boundary too, right? Like that's like such a feeling of yes, like I'm moving towards truth. I'm moving towards, like, I'm actively opening. And you know, when you notice, like for me, noticing I'm getting annoyed, it's like I often turn the annoyance in on myself of like, oh, you shouldn't be so annoyed by this. And it's like, actually, thank you for telling me that this is a no. I'm going to retract. I'm going to actually listen and move away and move towards the truth. And so for me, that's been a huge, like, understanding how to respond to my own annoyance or my own, like, contracting as like, thank you, body, not like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be contracting. We don't do this. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Oh, and I'm so grateful. Yeah, I'm so grateful to be in this space where we can all shake with each other. You know, it's like, this is the real stuff. And, you know, we shouldn't be settling for anything less than this. And also, everybody wants this too. Like, just because other people don't know how to get here, it doesn't mean they don't want to be here. And so you're going to notice that you are the stewards for other people in your life to meet you where you need to be met. And it takes a lot of courage to get there, because people will respond in fear because they're afraid of what's inside of them. But it's like, you hold the knowledge, the wisdom, the body knowledge that, like, that you are permanently safe no matter what your animal brain might tell you about. You know, it's perfectly normal for fears to come up, and it's also 100% true that we're 100% safe in every moment. And so that is the work that we're doing every day, is just bridging the gap between those two places of when we feel fear and then reassuring ourselves that we're permanently safe. And so to kind of like nuance a little bit of what we talked about before with what Abby was sharing about, like, it's our responsibility to create the safe space for ourselves. It's like, it's not about creating the safe space. It's just reminding ourselves that we're safe in the face of any situation that feels unsafe. And when you do that for yourself, you're also doing it for everybody else. Because the reason people aren't meeting you as deeply as you want to be met is because they just don't feel safe in going there. So you committing to your own safety is your only responsibility. And you're already doing it. Like, you're already inviting us into deeper spaces just by allowing yourself to go there within yourself. So thank you.
That was awesome. Katie, I felt like just a really sort of maternal sensibility that you're offering to the group there. Just like a real, just thank you. Yeah. I want to mention something which is kind of touched upon. Natalia touched upon this a little bit.
And Joshua, real quick, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody.
Oh, okay. Cool. Thank you so much.
I have to go.
Nice to see you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye. So, the insanity that we sometimes feel in setting boundaries is kind of like, do I want this or do I want this? You know, it can be very confusing. And part of the reason is because, you know, I have this, some of you might have seen my YouTube video on self-sabotage. Part of the reason for our confusion is because oftentimes our wounding wants things that are really painful. Like, we want things that, you know, the mind could understand as like, it's bad for us. You know, I want to be hurt. I want to be punished. I want to be abused. I want to be, I want to get in trouble. I want to get somebody else angry at me. I want to provoke. You know, there's like a lot of unconscious boundaries, a lot of unconscious desires, because this is the undeveloped animal self, like wanting individuation, wanting to be seen, wanting to make an impact, and not always in a positive way. And so we're drawn to unhealthy boundaries because of this. We're drawn to provoking and creating boundaries in others in order to have a sense of identity of who we are individually. And so being able to set healthy boundaries from our adult self with ourselves, this could be in the situation of interpersonal relationships. It can be in our relationship with food, with eating disorders. It can be in our relationships with, addiction to smoking. It could be with anything that is just a habitual grasping for something that we don't know why we want it so much, or we don't understand the dynamics, and it's just it's an unconscious sort of draw. And so having a difference between what our adult wants and what our child wants is very confusing and can make us feel like we're just losing it. We're like, what the heck is going on with me? And what's interesting about that is, like, let's say I really want this piece of chocolate. My body is like, I want it, hungry, consume. And then I've already had 7 pieces of chocolate, so I need to say no, right? So then my mind is like, I'm sorry, but no, I know you want that, but I can't let you have that. I need to cut it off at some point. It could be another shot of alcohol, it could be another one-night stand, it could be whatever it is. I need to cut it off at some point. And so then when I make that boundary with myself, it could go a few different directions. It could be a reaction like, fuck you, how dare you, like, set a boundary with me. I'm going to go even more crazy now, and I'm going to just really rebel. Or it could be like, thank you, that's really what I needed. Thank you for setting a boundary. Thank you for being the adult. I'm gonna cool it now, because that's really what I wanted, was for you to be able to set that boundary, right? And so in this way, we still get the individuation that we needed, because that child self is seen by the adult self. It might be immediate, or it might take a little while to let the energy, the momentum kind of fizzle out. But our relationship between our adult and our child, the more we acknowledge that relationship, the more the individuation occurs, because we get acknowledgement from an adult in a healthy way, and I'm recommending to do it in a kind and gentle, compassionate, healthy way, to speak to our inner child, so that need to individuate, that need to be seen, is accomplished. And it can, once that rapport is established, maybe one time, maybe 10 times, it can really unravel the so I'm not trying to turn the wild animal into a tame one. I'm creating teamwork. I'm creating harmony. I'm creating a sense of trust between the two. Like, I want the best for you, and I need to be stronger sometimes than the wild animal, so that the wild animal respects me, but it doesn't have to be tame. So it's a interesting relationship, and as that respect forms, then that creates a sense of oneness, and it creates the integration experience, so that the wild animal is me and I am the wild animal, and it's no longer as separate. And that unification is what allows for awakening out of the illusion of the separation. So that's how important boundaries are. It actually creates the healing process that we're looking for.
Yeah, and the boundary in the inner communication between the grown-up and the child. Okay, this inner communication is total key, like how this communication is conducted. But the inner child oftentimes needs a boundary set so growth is possible. Because sometimes the needs of the inner child are unreasonable, not able to be met, or if you would meet them, that they would simply destroy your life, and then it's just not possible. And therefore, you need to set boundaries for your inner children in such a way that they then have a possibility to feel this safety.
They can't sabotage you. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was something that I wanted to point out, or it's insight that I've had myself, and I'd be interested to hear if someone else also has noticed this. And this also comes down to a question of boundaries, and that is that I've noticed that in society, people you meet, everyone, friends, family, girlfriends, boyfriends, teachers, bosses, everyone expects a pound of flesh. Like everyone expects you to somehow betray yourself, to somehow show that you are not at ease in the communication, or that you somehow are out of yourself, because that's what they are themselves. So it's like a silent agreement between people that because this thing has occurred, then everyone has to somehow have betrayed themselves. I don't know if anyone of you have noticed this, but I've noticed this like very heavily here. Maybe it's a Danish thing, I don't know, but
Could be a Finnish thing too.
okay, yeah. So everyone like kind of wants you to not stand by you, like wants you to not be with yourself, and everyone kind of wants you to not have your own power and stand in your own power, because if you would have yourself, if you would have stood in your power and would not compromise, then you are let's call it a revolution in their consciousness, because then you're showing them that which they have lost themselves, and therefore they have to make sure that you're not in that space somehow. And I see that as a part of the unconscious communication between people, and this needs a boundary. That's why I wanted to point it out. Yeah, maybe you guys see this also. So, and I've set a boundary there, and I have said, no, I'm not going to play this game anymore, because I can't betray myself anymore. I cannot do it anymore on any level. It's just, I'm so tired of it that it's just, I can't do it anymore. So it's no. And this thing of having boundaries today is for me to say that the boundaries are my self-love, and if people don't like my boundaries, if people don't vibe with me because of my boundaries, then that's fine, that's good. Then it just means that it isn't meant to be. Like then just they are just at a different level than I, and that's all right. And my level doesn't necessarily have to be better or worse, or they don't have to be better or worse. It's just doesn't fit into the mix, right? And oftentimes, like people, they push you until you show them a boundary, and they want it. Because most people have hurt inner children inside of them, and it's the hurt inner child inside of them that pushes on you, that wants to see where is the boundary. And then when you set the boundary and you show, hey, I'm the grown-up in the situation, here's my boundary, then that oftentimes leads that grown-up to then come forth and say, hey, now it's cool. Now there's control over my inner child in such a way. So this is also a thing that I've noticed with boundaries. Yeah. I love this topic. Like I really love this topic. It's just a golden nugget. Like, and it tastes awesome. I love you guys.
Do you have time for another comment?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, when I think back, or kind of Hilma, you reminded me of kind of me 4 or 5 years ago, when I was in quite a kind of a flow state with getting around, relating to people, that kind of a thing. And I recognized this like in the last week, that a general approach I had towards meeting new people was effectively to do that kind of poking and pushing of boundaries type of a thing. Not necessarily in like a threatening way, but like, yeah, I'd explore like curveballs of topics and ways of being with that person. And it was very intentionally like looking for the point where I was kind of like seeing the actual surface of that person, and seeing like, okay, you know, maybe they're really secure people, and then these are the boundaries I've now discovered, or maybe they're not secure in some of the things that I've done, and therefore these are boundaries that I need to respect with them. But like, I very much had that approach of kind of like poke around and play around, that kind of thing, with like a huge veil of like sensitivity at the same time, so you can kind of like get a feel for the shape of a person. So yeah, it's actually really important for people to be aware that like their boundaries will be kind of at least touched upon, potentially even crossed, and then, you know, you then need to kind of react differently. It doesn't even have to be conscious. You could react differently subconsciously, as long, you know, your body language will often say it, you know, that maybe crossed a boundary for you. But at least in my experience, that's like a natural way of relating and connecting with people, and discovering people. And then also on Hilmar's thing about like society expecting us to kind of not be perfect. Like I do actually really catch myself kind of striving for perfection. It doesn't mean like all my behaviors are perfect, but like being secure or being okay with whatever happening, or, you know, just like kind of relaxing, or being happy about having the boundaries I have, or having been triggered that time, or as opposed to like ending up feeling shit about it or judging myself or something along those lines. And as I kind of like strive towards that type of perfection, sometimes I kind of like look around me and like notice that like I'm around a hell of a lot of people who are not working towards that, and a hell of a lot of kind of a big subset of those people who don't believe it's possible. And I'll be honest, I'm not even confident that it's possible. If anything, I'll just say like it's happy to have like a goal, and like the journey towards that goal is good enough for me, at least. But yeah, so like, you know, whilst like I'm not gonna like project on other people and say like you should also aspire towards that perfect place to be, I definitely really aspire to kind of like work towards that, and I create confusion in people. I create that sensitivity in people of like I'm striving for something that they thought was not allowed in their lives. Yeah, I definitely kind of like notice myself doing that a lot, and yeah, like it has ended up in some horrible conversations or horrible energies, I would say, with some people. But yeah, I think it's a thing, and I'm definitely just like you, gonna hold on to trying to be in that perfect state, or get to that perfect state, of accepting it how it is.
Awesome, thank you. Somehow in that, it brings up, reminds me of this sort of shadow that I sometimes have, which is like, somebody asks me for a boundary, like do you want, or do you mind, I'll just make something up, do you mind if I borrow your phone for a little while? If I say like this is my regular speaking voice, if I respond with this voice, then it's like the truth. But if I respond with like a high voice, like sure, then it's not always true. Like I'm kind of like saying yes when I don't really mean yes. I might mean no, or I might mean like, why the heck do you need my phone? But I'm like, sure. It's just like this weird sort of child voice. And so being able to own my yes and to own my no has like part of my saying it here is so that if I respond like that to you, I don't really necessarily mean what I'm saying. And so calling myself out on that, makes the process more conscious. And it can fly right by me. It can be like, I just meant no, and I said yes. That's so interesting. And it doesn't sound like me. It's like, apparently I'm like this. My shadow is like an elf or something. So I just wanted to mention that.
I relate to a shadow elf. Oh, Anarika, do you want to share?
No, well, maybe I can, but it's not related to what Joshua said, just.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna quickly add, like, I relate to this, my experience of like really owning my truth more created a lot of confusion in some of my relationships where I was typically, like basically responding in a neutral way, like I'm talking right now, made like one of my, I had a writing partner like a few years ago, and he would just be like, why are you're mad? What are you mad about? Why are you mad? And I'm like, no, I'm speaking to you in a neutral tone of voice, and this is not me being mad. This is me talking to you. So I had to like explain that I was not, this kind of goes, men are uncomfortable typically with women like having a neutral expression. It's like, oh God, what are you mad? It's like everyone's just traumatized from like their moms or something being, I don't know. But like, that's a big, and this is a big thing of like women being told to smile by men all the time because like, I'm uncomfortable with you being neutral. And it's like, it feels very threatening when really it's like, oh no, this is like I'm in my truth. And it's like, this is, get used to this kind of power. But it's very powerful, and men are intimidated by it typically. So that's my experience.
I had maybe some, and now I'm thinking I smile quite a lot, and then I'm now thinking whether that's been taken as something else than it is. So I don't know. But for me, smiling is really like, it just comes out of my heart, and I just like, that's so authentic to me. But what I wanted to comment was the culture part. So I remember growing up, my mom is very good at setting boundaries, like amazingly good. But what I remember from my childhood is that so many people just stepped on her back because of that. And then what happened to me was seeing these people, how they stepped her back for being so, setting so strong boundaries. So I kind of also turned my back on my mom, thinking she's too strong or she's doing the wrong thing because people are not accepting who she is. So even the conversation today is really eye-opening for me, that these people were not just ready to receive what she had as a gift for them, and then she was maybe just from another planet. And respecting her more for being able to do that, and maybe finding my way of doing that more, because I would somehow reconsidered it as bad or not the appropriate behavior in the culture that we live in. So that's been a misunderstanding. So it's a strong one coming from people that maybe have felt like not trusted themselves, being scared of somebody who's so much stronger in expressing what they want and what they don't want. So incredible.
I love that. And you, Anarika, you talked about what I was going to jump in with as well, which until today I hadn't really made the link that expressing a desire is akin to expressing a boundary. And I say it now and it seems so obvious, like, yes, by expressing a desire, that's me saying the yes, whereas I've historically thought of a boundary as the no, but actually the boundary is also the yes. And it reminded me of the confusion I created in my friends 3 weeks ago. Some friends and I went camping. That was the week when Mark and I didn't join the call. And at the moment, my practice or in my kind of recovery journey is surrendering all control. Surrendering the power of choice over anything to do with food, movement, body, exercise. And I hadn't, for me, that weekend away with friends was a real experience, because my friends are used to me being the direct one. My friends are used to me being like, let's do dinner at this time, then let's do this, let's do that. And me being really expressive with my desires, which is a strength of mine. And it kind of created chaos when they would look to me expecting me to express a desire. And the practice I'm having at the moment is not having control over food, movement, exercise, etc. And it was super challenging for them, because like Hilmar said, they were kind of pushing me for like, right, what's your desire, what's your boundary? And I'm like, I can't trust myself to express a healthy boundary. I didn't feel like I could trust myself to express a healthy boundary right now. When people are saying, oh, what do you want to do this afternoon, Abby? Should we like go for a walk? Should we like do this, do that? And I'm like, because I, quote unquote, want to go for a fucking 10-mile hike and burn off all the calories that we've just eaten in lunch. I, being the part of my brain that I'm trying to not feed and listen to at this point. And it was an absolute minefield. And you know, it was a really good learning experience for me to try and like find the way to still meet people with the desire and the certainty that they're pulling from me, but have it not be feeding, like allowing the ED to express its desires, or kind of maybe make a joke out of it, like, well, eating disordered Abby would really like to go for a 20-mile hike, but I'm gonna say that I'm happy to do anything that's sedentary, or like I am happy to go for any option, and if movement is included because that's you want, then that's okay, I'll go with that, but not movement that is my decision. It was just a mindfuck. So yeah, I'm really appreciating that idea that expressing a desire is a boundary too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I always like hearing about your journey. It's really like you're really inspiring. Thanks. I'm feeling like we could begin to wrap up. We're gonna hand over to Katie to Katie sent me a very sweet message. Thank you. We're gonna hand over to Katie to do our exit meditation, and just really grateful for everybody here today. And I feel like we have a lot to integrate. I might even want to rewatch this session because so much came up, and I think we can always increase our ability to set our boundaries, and including positive boundaries and negative boundaries. And I'm really grateful. So Katie, if you would like to share with us our unifying field here.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, just before we get into meditation, I invite you to take a second to just take everybody in, and in whatever way feels good to you. And send a message of whatever your heart wants to express to this group, just in the quiet of your own mind, of your own heart. I'm sending all of you a lot of gratitude and appreciation for the ways that you are each showing up for yourselves, and for the tiny tip of the iceberg of that commitment that you've allowed us to witness here in this group. And so as you take your attention from the group into yourself, I invite you to close your eyes and notice whatever is in your body that is vibrating the most right now, wherever your energy is, without expecting it to be anywhere, just approaching your body with some curiosity about what's moving inside of you. And rest your attention there on the energy, and it might be moving. And in the privacy of your own vessel, ask this energy, ask it, what do you need from me right now? What do you desire? And trust that whatever you hear first, even if it's nothingness, is exactly right. And in whatever way feels authentic to you, I invite you to make a promise to yourself, to renew your vows with yourself about what you're willing to do in order to more fully understand, listen to, and respond to your own boundaries. What is the promise that you want to make to yourself today? And as you make this promise to yourself, notice the sensation of safety that you're experiencing right now. Where do you feel a sense of security in your body? Where might you feel a sense of insecurity? And remembering that there's no moral value on either of these experiences, and your ability and intention to tune into what is authentic to you in a moment is the safety itself. Your sense of safety will only deepen as your listening deepens. And as we bring our attention back to the group before we come back to join in our collective experiencing, I invite you to move in whatever way your body wants to move and make whatever sounds your body might want to make. Whether that's a sigh or screaming or just simply shaking, allowing what has just moved as a group, allowing it to move through you without judgment. Whenever you feel ready, I invite you to open your eyes. And taking this energy you've cultivated within yourself and directing it wherever it feels to go right now, whether that's back towards your own heart or towards the people in the group, towards humanity. Trust that wherever you're directing it, it's all going to the same place. Yeah, thank you all for bringing your presence and for being here.
Thank you, Katie. That was beautiful. So yeah, with that, I invite everybody to unmute ourselves and we can have a brief goodbye, and then I will see you soon.
Bye. Thanks for an amazing session.
Bye.
Bye. I love you all.
Love you too.
I love you. Love you all. Thank you so much.
Take care.